what data can we trust, and how we have to handle data in clinical trials? So in clinical trials, basically data have two dimensions: quality dimension and protection dimension. So according to regulators, quality data in clinical trial should follow ALCOA principles. Basically, we have to understand who and when generated data and what is data, and we also should be able to capture data in its original state and store for kind of a long period of time. Regarding protection, it's quite important to understand that only authorized people should have access to data, especially if data haven't been anonymized. So we can see these ALCOA principles. Well, we should understand that clinical trials capture very complex phenomena. Usually they have numerous records, basically subjects. It can be thousands of subjects. And we have to capture very many data points. So usually data sets have very numerous variables. In addition, data collected in different countries and also submitted into different countries. So as soon as clinical trials became a norm, it became quite obvious that standardization of clinical data is mandatory. As a result, a special organization, the Clinical Data Interchange Standards Consortium, was formed with main goal to develop and maintain trial data standards. Basically, this organization developed and maintained a set of data standards that are used in clinical trials. Basically, I put on this slide only three main standards. The first standard, clinical data acquisition standard harmonization, is for data collection in clinical trials. Basically, case report form documents that captures source data should be designed and built according to this standard. The second standard, study data tabulation model, SDTM, is for organization, formatting, and submitting data. And there is also ADAM model. This is kind of model for statistical analysis. It is important to say that SDTM and ADAM kind of models, they have numerous data sets. And some of these data sets now are required by regulators. And the leading role in using these data standards now is played by FDA. But it's a matter of time when other countries will follow the lead. So, because of introduction these data standards, we but clinical trials now have very quite universal or standardized data flow. So what is data flow? First of all, we have to capture source data. Then we have to accumulate this data in clinical databases because data can be collected over a period of time. After this, we have to do data extraction and transformation, and we have to create SDTM tables. This is for data submission to regulators. After this, we have to create ADAM tables, and after doing statistical analysis, we have to create tables, figures, and listings. At this point, we also create metadata. Then we do medical writing, clinical report generation, data organization, drug dossier compilation, because drug dossier usually has different parts, submission and registration. So this is quite a typical data flow, but there are variations. For example, ADAM tables can be generated from clinical databases, but that's not very recommended because traceability can be not as clear as with this data flow. In other words, it's important to understand that when we have this data flow, we have to understand where data come from and where it go to. In addition, clinical databases may not be used, and source data can go directly into SDTM tables. But whether it's beneficial or not, it's hard to say. But some clinical research organizations try to do this. You see that some steps have asterisks. This is because these steps mainly done with the SAS 9. So as a result, SAS 9 is the main industry standard. And yeah, it's used all over the world. We have to say that SAS 9 is validated and trusted by regulators. So you can use other software, but you have to be you have to clearly understand that in most cases regulators do recalculation by using SAS, and if there are discrepancies in results generated by SAS prevail. That's why people who do not use SAS 9, it's better to use, because if you have a very expensive project, what's the point not to use SAS 9? But it seems that data flow is quite well organized and we don't have problems. But is this true? Unfortunately not. SAS 9 has some limitations, some weaknesses. In addition, clinical research is not a frozen area, and there are emerging issues, and SAS 9 is not well prepared to face those emerging issues. But do we have a better alternative? Yeah, and I think SAS Viya is better to address current limitations and to face emerging issues. But before we speak about SAS 9 weaknesses and SAS 9 and emerging issues, it's better to speak what is SAS Viya. And my kind of description is going to be very short, because then Vasilij speak a bit more about what is SAS Viya. But what we have to understand about SAS Viya is that SAS Viya is cloud-enabled, basically analytic machines. And basically it has two two servers, two big machines. So one, it's a platform that has two machines. One is called SPRI, is SAS Program Runtime Environment. And basically this is old and trusted SAS 9. So you can write and run SAS 9 code. And then we have like what is called cloud analytical services. This is another machine. And this machine is for using with large data sets or with complex calculations. Basically, what it does is partition data in, again, it's very simplistic, I want to say, so it's much more complex, but it's probably to very simplify, maybe not totally correct, but what it does, basically it splits or partition data set in smaller parts and distribute these parts via server controller to server workers. And server workers do their job on the smaller data sets, and then results or in other data sets reassembled again by a server controller. This is what SAS Viya, it's nutshell. Okay, then let's speak about current SAS 9 limitations. So there is no specific order in this kind of issues, simply we should go one by one. So because SAS 9 is just kind of a statistical software package, it's quite difficult to to grant right access to right people. But why? Because it's kind of cloud-based. So this right management is much easier. Well, actually, there is no such kind of a term as scalability in SAS 9. So you have to pay for this kind of for licenses, and you have to use, or even whether you use or not, you have to pay. But because again, SAS Viya is a cloud-based technology, so you can scale kind of your computational power in accordance with your project. So if you need more power, you can scale up. If you don't need more power, you can scale down. Again, then maintenance and update. So in most cases, if you have SAS 9 and you have, for example, large clinical research organization, then you have to basically shut down your servers for maintenance and update. And this can be quite painful. But you have to do this fewer times when you use SAS Viya, because it's actually use containers technology that allows not to do this in every case. Then we have automation common tasks, such as, for example, database extraction and so on. Again, SAS 9 can do this, but it's not so easy to automate. You usually have to use other kind of SaaS products. But because due to cloud nature, it's much simpler in SAS Viya. Then open source integration. You can integrate with SAS 9, but that's hard. And in SAS Viya, it's very easy through connectors. For example, in Python, it's just a library. You have to use special library written in Python, and then can you use, for example, Python to communicate and work with SAS Viya. So this is kind of what we have about current limitation that may kind of impact how clinical research organizations do their clinical trials. But that's not all. We also have what is called new challenges, emerging issues. Again, there is no specific order in how items appear in the table, but it's quite obvious now that SAS invests kind of almost all its resources and kind of efforts in developing SAS Viya. And as a result, SAS Viya can enjoy full support from SAS. Then we have medical devices, sensors and wearables. Basically, for example, like constant monitoring level of blood sugar. So these medical devices enter clinical kind of price at very kind of fast speed, but they usually generate large data sets. This is also true regarding real world data, basically medical records. They are not used for now in submission processes, but there are hot debates whether they should be used in this real world data. Medical devices trials and real data can generate very large data sets. As a result, computation with SAS 9 can be extremely slow, but SAS Viya specifically designated to do this computation fast. Then we have new types of clinical trials, such as hybrid decentralized adaptive trials. We have to understand, because they usually may require a lot of statistical simulation and computation for statistical simulation. Again, this computation can be slow with SAS 9, but can be extremely fast with SAS Viya. So you see what we have. So about analytics for everyone. Before I'm going to forward this webinar to Vasilij, I would like to say one thing, that SAS Viya actually, SAS by itself as company, advocates that everyone should have access to analytic and data and to tools to work with data. As a result, in SAS Viya, there are, I would say, two streams. One stream for coders and one for non-coders. So, and if for those who can code, it's quite easy. So there is kind of application where one can write and run code. So there is a bunch of applications for people who can't code, and this kind of application, those applications use what is called click, drop, drag and drop approach, where you can actually drag, click on data, drag and drop on work canvas, and then you can kind of do the same with statistical procedure. And then you have the same result as coders that write their code. So it basically means that not only people with coding skills can use SAS Viya. So, and that's all for my first part of seminar. Then I'm gonna show a bit the second demo, but now I forward to Vasilij to show what is SAS Viya look like.
Thank you very much, Mikalai. There was another slide on CAS, or is it just okay? Never mind. I'll jump to the demo.
This is my mistake. Sorry, I'm doing. Yeah.
If it's not there, it's okay. We just jump to demo.
Yeah.
It was okay. Then for the slide for the CAS, I'll take over the screen sharing and I'll go from there. So like Mikalai mentioned, Viya is a distributed system. It has two, not necessarily machines, like Mikalai mentioned, but more of our execution runtimes. One is CAS, the other one is Spray, but most importantly, the application itself is 100% available through online interfaces. By online interfaces means it's in the browser. You guys can see my screen now? Let's try again. Let me know that.
Yep, everything is fine.
Okay, great. So everything accessed through the browser. Any modern browser supports it, Chrome or Edge or otherwise. SAS focused on analytical lifecycle. From beginning to the end, everything is done within one application. From getting access to the data, I must say on the commercial side, Mikalai mentioned access to the databases. If you worked on the SAS 9, you know that you might have to buy SAS access engines to access different databases. Now with the SAS Viya, you get all the access engines included free of charge with your purchase of Viya. That means that whatever data source you have, it's easy to define it as point and click in manage data, select what you want to connect to, where you want to connect to from, complete your connection, and you will be able to get access to the data there. This comes with the full power of SAS Access Engine, and that means that when you run your queries, the queries will be passed to the database to run it within that. Now, the full management and control of the application also happens through the online interface. I will talk a little bit more about that later, but your CAS libraries, other libraries also available within a single online web interface. Once you get on the data, you are able, if I pick up any of the examples here, you are able to, in the ingest data module, you're able to profile data, you're able to modify it, point and click transformations to it. Once the prepared data is ready, it's loading. It's in the preparation data. Once the data is ready, you get to modify it with the plan. The plan, again, just a point and click. If I select an example, sample data, okay, you're able to see the profiles of the data. You're able to combine and modify and profile it, do the metadata updates, to the profiles, all the transformations on the left. It's a matter of drag and drop. Over here, you are able to go in and generate the SAS code that's been created for this particular transformation. You're able to save the job, you deploy it elsewhere. Again, everything happening in one place. When you need to visualize the data or the tests, and I'm not a CRO myself, I'm talking from more of a SAS consultant point of view, all the reports are memory driven and available If I open an example here, retail insights, and available again online. No, don't want to do any changes. Available online that can be easily and quickly shared with the others. The editing of the reports as well as access to the reports also happening through the online interfaces, and it's a fully interactive experience. And because of the power of CAS, you get modern visualizations that are smooth, slick, that you could schedule these reports, you could share them very quickly and easily. When you're sharing the report, it's not a matter of extracting the Excel file, taking a screenshot. It's simply saying, I want to copy the link or share the report, select, I don't want to save any changes, select the name of the person that you would like to share, click share, and they will get the link with the permissions that you would like them to have. So again, very much a new modern web interface with the type of access to the data and visualization that you might be used to from other SaaS-based applications. Going on the full life cycle of data, become building models. Models that's going to be machine learning models, may not necessarily be applicable for the CRO, but all your typical clustering techniques, integration with R, Python, the other type of modeling techniques, everything available out of the box. From standard forests to the booster models to logistic regressions, the others available here, which again, done with a complete point and click interface. The models can be registered in the central repository. They can be deployed from the central repository as well with a minimum to no coding required. Another module that's important is SAS Drive. With this one, you can organize your information. And when I'm saying your information, where previously within SAS, it would be difficult to impossible to load like a text files. Here, for example, I can take a Word, I can take a normal text document, and I'm able to load this text document in a folder of my choosing to keep track of it. So now you can combine your documentation, your SAS code, reports, other metadata objects that describing your work can be all stored in one place. Each of these folders have their own permissions that you can assign. So again, some people can read and write to it. The examples, samples, templates can all be created in one place. That's, again, all of it is a fully online collaboration, which is particularly useful in this day and age of remote work, where people connect through VPNs, where people can be working everywhere and have access to that. And of course, the last one is a SAS Studio. For many of you, you're familiar with the SAS base, where you write the code. SAS Studio is online interface where you get to write and develop your own code. So a very simple example, I open a new program, I say, let's say, set init, run, and I can run the code. Again, everything is done online, works always fast because it's close to the execution, it's close to the data, it's within the data center that the rest of the system's running. But this one, because it's Viya, comes with other advantages. For example, if I were to go and save this code, I'll save it here as a CRO example. Now that I've wrote this code, I could very quickly and easily go and schedule it, for example. I can schedule it as a job. I would say I want to run it daily. Let's say I want to repeat it only one time, save. And now this job will be scheduled to run fully automatically, giving that capability to automate the work, automate the execution in place. Now, within CRO, it's very common often that you automate stuff or you make it repeatable. You can create your own snippets, your own tasks, your own executions, and share them between your whole team, making sure that the standards, the way the people execute code, the way they write the code, applied across the board, including documentation. Of course, the libraries, access to the data available in a usual interface the way you like it to. And now you also have integration with Git, which means that you will be able to integrate and version control your code, everything from a one central interface without necessarily managing multiple applications. Now, that's what comes to analytical lifecycle, administration part. Building the custom graphs, custom themes is more over how the application looks and feels. Explore lineage. Any code that you write and will be stored within the SAS drive can be analyzed, flows and others, and the data lineage created on the back of that. Manage environment. I'm an administrator on this platform, so I will be able to see a little bit more. This one allows to manage the users, manage their permissions, manage data. You can everything through a simple online interface. You're able to see the health of the platform. This one is a Viya version 3.5 that does some of the visualization within this particular interface. Management of formats, management of the jobs, management of the users, data, everything is in one place. And that gives you full control. You can delegate that control to the other users. There's no need to have multiple applications that allow you to do various different things. Everything is happening through one simple interface. So on that note, I'm pretty much out of time for my demo, and that's the end of it. Mikalai, did I miss anything? Would you like me to mention anything before we go to your demo? You're on mute.
Yeah, one thing I would like to add that for example, it's very important that you can develop your collection of macros and they can be stored and used by everyone. And also I would say, for example, that you can use visual analytics for example, very specific task. For example, if you need to control your screening process when you recruit patients, you have this mapping screening centers, and in every screening centers you can point and to see, for example, how many patients approach screening, how many patients or potential candidates in screening, how many were rejected or how many recruited. So it's quite nice and interactive, so you can get constant information. Probably that's it.
And there's always traceability back to the data used for the graphics. So when you, for example, have a bar chart like that, you could simply click export data, select, and you get the actual source data on the back of it. So there is no need to try to work it all the way back what source data was worked for it. It can be used straight away like that. Okay, then over to you for the rest of the demo.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna share. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna wait a minute. I have to go to. Okay, I'm gonna go to. Okay. For the last before demo, I need only one slide to show. So sorry for this. Yeah, this one. Basically, yeah, what about our demo? So the purpose of our demo to show only that SAS code works in SAS Viya, and we decided to show how to calculate average bioequivalence with a method used by European Medicine Agency. And I would like to speak a bit about bioequivalence trials. So basically, it's trials when we want to when generic drugs want to enter the market. So in essence, what we do in clinical trials, bioequivalent clinical trials, we give basically healthy volunteers on separate days reference and test drugs. And then we measure at the same time, but through a period, which is called wash period, drug concentration. Then we derive pharmacokinetic parameters and compare their ratio. And we have to ensure that the ratio is close to 1. And if they are close to 1, then we can say that this is trial bioequivalent, but they can kind of differ a bit. Then we construct a confidence interval for this ratio. And this confidence interval should be within range of 80 to 125%. This is introduction to my demo, and now we have to go to the demo. So first of all, I would like to speak a bit about data set. And this is our data set. So it consists of basically 6 variables and 48 observations. And those observations represent 24 subjects. We see that each subject has 2 records. Well, this is because some subjects in the first period, they receive test drug and reference drug in the second period. And other patients, actually, they have the opposite. So they, in the first period, they receive reference drug, and in the second period, test drug. Then we have a period column and treatment column. These 4 columns are factors in our statistical model. And that's not I kind of, how to say, made them up. This is requirements from regulators. And then we have 3 pharmacokinetic parameters. Usually, they can be actually calculated by SAS, but it's quite a complicated process. So usually, in real time, clinical research organizations, they use specific pharmacokinetic software, for example, from Certara. And we use, and then we have basically compare this kind of parameters between test and reference drug. This is all about data set. And now let's go to our, so this is what we have. So this is kind of SAS9 script written by myself. And I want to say two things before I go into detail about the script. That first of all, I'm not a professional programmer, so my script may be improved or polished. And secondly, we don't use cloud analytical service in this script. And the reason we do this is because cloud analytical service probably deserves its own webinar. So everything is going to be run in Spree environment. Then let's kind of see what I did actually. So the first we have to create lib name to access Excel file. We can actually run this. Oh, sorry, we have to do this first. Sorry. Yes. So then we have to do log transformation again of pharmacokinetic parameters that is required by regulators. So again, this code can be approved, but we can run this. So we have, you see that everything is okay. There is no errors. Then we have to create 2 macro variables. Again, can be done differently. We run this. And then I wrote macro programs. Basically, we have to run this, and then I'm explaining what is done. Basically, oh, sorry, I have, no. Sorry, I have to play this again. Okay, a bit mistake. So I need to, wait a minute, I'm gonna sign up a bit and then share because, yeah. So I actually run only partly my macro programming. So basically, yes. So basically, I'm gonna quickly run this and then run my macro program. Yeah, so basically these macro programs, it's very simple. So we have to use this proc GLM procedure for every pharmacokinetic parameters. Again, this code is not written by me, I borrowed from European Medicine Agency. And what this code is doing basically, it's calculating log transformed geometric mean ratio between pharmacokinetic parameters, Cmax, AUC, of test and reference drugs, and then build confidence interval of this ratio. And then we actually have to transform this confidence interval back to normal. And then we have to present our results. So if we run this macro program, we got these results. So if you look, okay, so if you look, so this is basically output of ANOVA analysis. And this is actual tables are very similar to those that are used in clinical reports. And this is the main tables where we have to check whether our drug is bioequivalent to reference drugs. In order to get percentage, we have to multiply by 100%. But again, in clinical trials, they don't do this usually. I don't know why. But we can see that basically that during our calculation, we can ensure that test and reference drugs are bioequivalent. And yeah, and our calculation is very similar to results that were submitted by company to European Medicine Agency. So this is kind of our short demo presentation. And yeah, again, I would like to kind of the main conclusion that clinical research organizations shouldn't be scared of Vaya. They can use their kind of, if they need, they simply use SAS9 code and it works perfectly. And I think that's it. That's my kind of second demo. Vasilij?
Okay, so that concludes the presentation. Let's check if we have any questions. It doesn't look like we have any questions. Denise, do you think we missed anything you would like to add?
Actually, no, but if we don't have any questions now, maybe I can set up some discussion. Yeah, if you don't mind. You know, almost everybody in CRO now working in their local environments. And few years ago, we had found LSAF Life Science Analytical Framework that is SAS product as well, and it's also in cloud. So what is the difference between LSAF framework and SAS Viya if we will choose to, as a CRO, to go to cloud?
Okay, the LSF framework, if I remember correctly, is just a set of content that comes in the back of that, like reports and examples of code and the dashboards applicable to the typical life sciences projects. Many of them probably will be available because SAS is in the process of migrating most of their solutions from SAS9 to Viya. There is no roadmap across the board that tells you which project is going to be happening where, but if you already have access to the content such as LSF on SAS9, you will be able to migrate it over to the Viya as well. Most of the content such as stored procedures, flows, enterprise guide, and the others are now migratable onto Viya, and going forward, other types of objects such as data integration jobs and the others will also be migratable. There's one thing is to keep in mind that when you're running LSF, it's the technical parts underneath that might be different. For example, if your SAS9 environment is Latin 1 encoding, which is often the default in Europe and in other places, Viya runs on a UTF-8 only, and that could have some impact on some of the code and some of the data. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally. Thanks. You mentioned that we can use Git in SAS Viya, yeah?
That's right.
What about integration with other systems? Because a lot of CROs have their procedures to perform version control, and maybe they will want to use SVN or even CVS. Can we use those systems here in SAS Viya?
If the system in question is using the Git standard, SVN, for example, isn't. But if it's using a Git standard, it can be configured to communicate to that. It's two requirements for the Git integration for the SAS Studio. It must be Git standard and it must support encryption key authentication. So your RSA key authentication. As long as the system that you are using supports those two, you will be able to integrate it with a SAS Studio in this case to use that version control. Unfortunately, SVN and others, like a Tortoise SVN and others, they don't support the Git commands out of the box to the full extent.
Yeah, cool, thanks. And I have one more question. Yeah, we were talking about databases, and it's not a secret that it's always nice to have bridge between your EDC system, electronic data capture system, with your electronic CRF, and some of your databases, or maybe directly with the SAS. So I know that in LSF we have such connectors. Am I right that we can use those connectors in SAS Viya as well?
I'll need to look a bit closer about which connectors you have in mind, LSF. But if it talks to the database, any connection to the database from SAS can happen with the SAS Access Engine. Now, SAS Access Engines, there are some of them specific for the databases, like, for example, SAS Actions for Microsoft SQL database, and some of them generic, says SAS Access for DBC. If your solution is accessing databases, it will be accessing them using one of the SAS Access Engines. And Viya comes with all of those SAS Access Engines. So whichever ones you're using for the LSF right now, they should be available for you on Viya.
Oh, cool.
But, by the way, I can add that if you use like electronic capture system, that it should communicate with database anyway. So if it's like, for example, use JSON format to communicate, yes, that's why I can easily handle this as well.
Yeah, it's always good to have some automatic way with some shuttle and stuff. It may be the good, the good demonstration for the next next webinars to show such connection. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Viya brings other benefits to the table. Viya has full open API. And that means that if you have a solution that has some type of bespoke integration with the SAS 9, you're probably able to rebuild that and use the API out of the box. So the API comes with a full token authentication, auth2 authentication. It supports the full REST commands of both access to the data, access to cache, access to the full capability within that. Access to the API can also be governed through the internal security model. So you can create the users, put them to the groups, and allow those groups to be able to have certain types of operations, both on the objects within a Viya and to the applications. So whatever bespoke application that you need to integrate with SAS, Viya makes it really, really easy. And it's the same about any programming language. So if you have whatever programming language out there, doesn't matter, from Java to anything else, you can now interact with Viya straight away out of the box. It's as simple as writing your own curl command.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds really good.
I also want to add that in some cases, CROs, they're using SAS 9 that's running on a laptop locally. And while this is not part of the demo, although it can be, The SAS Viya is also available to run on the laptops. It's now run within the Docker environment, and that means it can be run on a Windows, Linux, as well as Apple devices. And it brings the full power of SAS Studio with the Git integration, with connectivity to the databases, accessible through the browser. It can be run within Docker environment on your local machine, and your laptop can support it. There's really very minimal basic requirements there, and the same software can be run in the cloud. Admittedly, it doesn't come with cache, but you will be able to run the full power of SAS-based and SAS-stat code locally with the Viya. And it comes with the benefits of access engines. The other part important to mention, all Viya software now comes with training included free of charge. So the training is a bespoke learning portal, and you get access to it as soon as you get your SAS Viya license. So most of that training that you would before might have to pay for or access internal resources, now included free of charge with the software. So what do you think? Denise, do you have any other questions?
No, thanks. Don't have any now.
Let's check the LinkedIn. Doesn't look like we have any more questions there. Then I would suggest that we could round up and finish it on that. So again, Denise, Mikalai, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for people that found us on LinkedIn and joined the presentation there. We will be doing a second webinar that I think is scheduled in a several weeks' time that we'll be promoting. Mikalai, would you like to introduce the second webinar a little bit in detail?
Yeah, okay. We kind of thinking, we haven't yet decided what we have to, it's going to be a big topic about migration from SAS 9 to SAS Viya, but more specifically, we're thinking about whether to do webinar about scheduling or automation common task, or about how to use the cloud analytical services in clinical trials to do a real job. So we will decide in a couple of days, and we'll post what we're going to be.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Denise and Mikalai, and thank you for everyone else. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye everybody.